Shalom. Today I want to talk to you on the subject of ancestral spirits. Now, to begin with, ancestral spirits are not a type of spirits that is different from all other spirits. Instead, when we talk of ancestral spirits, they are just the ordinary demonic forces from the demonic realm or from the kingdom of darkness, which forces are licensed or which forces derive their legitimacy or legal right of operation from the transactions that were carried out by our ancestors, which transaction then gave license to such kind of spirits to involve themselves in the lives of a particular bloodline or a particular family name. So, but we cannot talk of ancestral spirits without understanding first the subject of covenant, because it is important in the operations of what we now call ancestral spirits. Now, I want you to understand what a covenant is. Now, a covenant is a system or a platform that allows spirits to interact with humanity on a legal basis. That is a covenant. It's a system or a platform that allows spirits to interact with humanity on a legal basis. Now, covenant legitimizes certain spirits, good or bad, to legally operate in a certain bloodline or in a certain family name. So you need to understand that when we talk of ancestral spirits, we are talking of spirits that operate on a legal basis. There is a framework that has permitted them or allowed them to function or to operate or to claim ownership of a certain bloodline or a certain family name. Now, hear this. It is important to understand that there is no God that is worshipped without a covenant. Now, we know that there is but only one God. There is only one true God. But also we have to agree that there are other gods that are worshipped. Now, all other gods that are worshipped that are not the true God are the many faces of the devil. So in reality, humanity is worshipping either God, the creator of the heavens and the earth, or they are worshipping Satan. Now, God himself is a spirit, according to John chapter 4, verse 24. God is spirit, and so those that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Now, also we should understand that Satan himself is a spirit. Now, because God is spirit, so God cannot be worshipped without a covenant. Satan cannot be worshipped without a covenant, because there is no spirit that interacts with humanity without the framework of a covenant. It is the framework of a covenant that gives that liberty to spirits to interact with humanity. Now, another aspect of a covenant that I want you to understand is that covenants are deeply spiritual. When we talk of covenants, we are talking of spiritual things. It may be carried out in the realm of the physical, but it has got a spiritual meaning, which is more deeper than what we may think. And as covenants are spiritual, they also transcend, they go beyond an individual. In other words, they are, or they go beyond a personality. For example, if we look at Genesis chapter 17, God made a covenant with Abraham, And God was particular and very specific with Abraham. He said, this covenant that I'm making with you, I'm not making with you alone. I'm also making this covenant with the generations that will proceed from you. So which means a covenant that Abraham made with God was not limited to him. It was going beyond him. It was transcending him. It was transcending or going beyond his personality as a person. In other words, we can safely say that Abraham was standing as a representative of the people or generations that were yet to come. Now, the absence of the originator of a covenant does not mean or does not necessarily mean the end of the relationship that was created when the covenant was cut. What do I mean? Because God made a covenant with Abraham. Now, the death of Abraham did not mean the end of the relationship between God and the descendants of Abraham. In other words, I'm saying Abraham was standing as a representative. He was representing even generations yet unborn when he made a covenant with God. Now, when it comes to covenants, one person stands to represent even generations yet unborn. A perfect example is that of Abraham, who represented even the children that were yet unborn. And the covenants, they establish continuity in a relationship from the originator to those that are being represented. So be careful. What you do as an individual does not end with you. I always say that the height of selfishness is to think that everything begins with you and everything ends with you as a person. Now, anything that you do that establishes a covenant, it goes beyond you. You are representing a generation or people that are not yet born, which means many people are in covenants which they entered by representation, whether you know it or you don't know it. And for your own information, most of these covenants are covenants that are active even right now in the lives of many people, especially covenants that were cut by those that lived before us, who are our ancestors. Now, the covenant that God made with Abraham involved generations yet unborn. So is the covenant that your forefathers made with the God that they worshipped then, which we understand now from our teachings that our forefathers were in darkness. They were under the power of Satan, which means in worshiping Satan, they established certain covenants which are active even today. Then those covenants gives legal rights to certain forces to lay claim or to claim ownership of certain bloodlines and family names. Now, take note that the subject of discussion shifted from focusing on Abraham when God made a covenant with Abraham. The subject of discussion shifted from Abraham to the children that were not yet born. You see now. And they discussed the children that were not yet born, which means they were given as collateral. Were you not the subject of talk when your forefathers were cutting a covenant with the devil, the God which they worshipped then, which was in ignorance and in deception? Which means God made a covenant with Abraham as a representative of the generations yet to come. This means that all the generations that proceeded from Abraham, they did not have an option of choosing a God, because a God was already chosen for them by their forefather Abraham, which means also that they were bound by the terms and conditions of the covenant that Abraham made with his God. Now, this is a reality. Even if we flip it the other side, this is a godly side, but there is always the evil side of it. Now, it also means that the Israelites were bound by the terms and covenants, terms and conditions of the covenant that Abraham made with God, despite the fact that they were not yet born. Now, it is not a reason to say that I was not yet born and I don't know what my forefathers did. You were represented, and so you were involved. This is part one. Look out for part two. God bless you.